My name is Jeff. My son Pete's helping me here. We're going to show you how to rebuild the Freehub on a CrossMax SL Mavic wheel. This is a mountain bike wheel. I bought this in about 2004 and it needs some servicing on the hub, so it wasn't on YouTube. We figured we would add to the knowledge base out there and show you how to do it. There's a few tools that you're going to need. Okay, this is what comes in the rebuild kit. You have to ask for this rubber seal because it doesn't come as part of the rebuild kit. You got your pawls and your springs included in the plastic bag. You have a little washer and you've got your Freehub body. That's my old one, but that's what comes in the kit. So you're going to want to look for that. You need a 5mm Allen, a 10mm Allen. You need the Mavic, I guess it's this equivalent of a cone wrench. It has little indents on it to allow you to be able to engage the bearing capture. And then you're going to need some Freehub oil. This I purchased at the bike shop. It is a, it's called a Dumond Freehub oil. Let me see if you could see it there. Dumond Freehub oil. There you go. That's what I'm going to use in this case. Mavic says a light mineral oil you can use. I wasn't able to find that, so I just went to the bike shop and got this. Then you're going to need a free cassette removal tool. Mine's a Shimano, and then I use a crescent wrench to use with the cassette removal tool. And you're going to need a screwdriver. You're going to need some brake clean that cleans everything up, so when you put it back together it looks good, and a roll of paper towels to keep everything clean. So the first thing we're going to do is get the hub off. The first thing you have to do is remove the skewer. That's not too difficult. Just unscrew it, pull it out, watch you don't lose your springs. I usually just put it back together so that the springs don't get lost. The next thing you do is there's a little spacer here that just comes off if you pull it with your hand. Sometimes it's a little tough to get off, but there's an O-ring on there, so you pull that out. The value of the paper towels is to set things down. It's really important to get things clean. That grit is what wears things out. So when you do all of this, you have to clean everything up before you put it back together. The next thing we're going to do is use the chain whip and the park tool to get the hub off. This engages into the hub right here, like that. I usually use a large crescent and a chain whip to get that off of there. If you line these up next to each other, you can pull away from them. Make sure your chain whip is engaged so it doesn't slip, and then you can loosen it and it comes off. You unscrew it like that. Again, I'm actually doing this after I rebuilt it the first time, so I've cleaned everything up. So you put that on your clean paper towel, and this is what it looks like. You have the axle shaft there, and you can see how it's moving. Next thing we want to do is remove this portion over here with the park tool. We're going to use a 5mm to engage this. Go ahead, turn it off, buddy. Okay, so the key tools you need for this part is a 10mm Allen head. It doesn't have to be a T-handle, and a 5mm Allen head, and you need the tool that comes with the Mavic wheels. So there's a socket in there for this 5mm Allen, and then you engage on the indentations on this side and you loosen that up, and that takes it. This is essentially what the old cone wrenches used to do, and you can spin it off. Right here you can see it coming off, and this will expose the bearings if you need to do anything with the bearings. I personally don't, my bearings are running smooth, but you pull this off, set it down, and this gets you to your bearings inside right along here. If your bearings aren't running smooth, you can feel that by twisting them. These are running as smooth as can be, and so let's get on with the rest of it, and you can see from this side it's running as smooth as can be. Next step to get to the hub is you take your 10 millimeter wrench or Allen head and your 5 millimeter Allen head and insert in the other side, and you just get it to engage and then you loosen it. Okay, that is loose now. You pull this off, and then you can twist it by hand if you're holding the other one. And then this part's pretty tricky. You have to be careful. I'll show you in a second. Once this comes out, it pulls out. You can set that down. And then you have to be careful. There's pawls and there's little springs in here. So what you have to do is while you're lifting up, you have to twist it while you're lifting up, and it'll pull it right off the pawls. And then you can see in here that I've already cleaned this up, but what's going to happen is there's dirt and grit in here, okay? And you can see where it's supposed to engage the pawls. I'll set this down on my clean paper towel, and here's your pawls. And you can see that the pawls are worn along the edges. Now what you have to be careful of is you pull it up here, and there's a little spring in there, and then these just come out by hand. And right now, this is one of the things that I'm going to change, is you want to be careful that these springs don't fall off. You can see on the edge how it's worn right along this edge. That's what engages the teeth on the inside of the hub. So we're going to replace these pawls. One fell out on the floor, but I have a new set of pawls with a new set of springs that we're going to replace. Okay, you can cut that now, Pete. Okay. So this is the new set of pawls. I got this from the local bike store. They asked me for the serial number on the wheel, which you can find right near the the Presta valve. So you read off that number, you take it to the bike store, they're able to call Mavic and order a new set. This one you can see is M40578, B as in boy, I, S as in Sam.
We can really
is
see
the
it.
part number. So it's going to come with the pawls, and then there's these two little springs. You want to be very careful you don't lose those springs. And probably keep the old ones just in case you ever lose one whenever you do this. Probably should do it once a year. A lot of grit gets in there. Okay, so hit it, Pete.
What do you mean?
Turn it off. Okay, there's one other thing that I wanted to make you aware of. There's a little rubber seal in here which keeps all of the oil in and the grit and grime out. I've already replaced it, but the rubber seal looks like this. You can see that it's not symmetrical. You have to make sure that this side goes in first. This is the side that rubs against the Freehub body. So when you slide it in, make sure you take it, put it on top like this, and then slide it down over, and obviously make sure not to nick it or anything as you're sliding it over. I've already done that. The other thing I've already done is clean this all up with brake clean. Just spray it in there and it does a good job of cleaning everything out. The next thing we have to do is put the pawls in. Turn it off, buddy. Okay, this is probably going to be hard to see, but I have the little spring on my fingers here, and I have the new pawl on here. There's a little nipple that you want to fit that spring over top of, and you can kind of turn it as you're putting it on, and then it'll just stay on just like that. And then what you want to do is you want to take it with your stable hand, because it's a real tricky operation to put it in the wheel. So I position it like this, and so there's really two things that you need to be able to do. One is you got to be able to drop it in like that. Okay, you drop it in and you get it situated, and it'll be obvious when it's in, but there's also a detent in the hub itself that you want to use the screwdriver to push it down into. So you can take the screwdriver here, push the spring in a little bit, and you'll feel it go in to that little detent right there. There it is, right there. And that's what you want the spring to be able to do. See how it pushes it back out? And there's a very light load on there. So I'm going to do the other one and then show you how to get the hub seated. So turn it off, buddy. Here's the next step. This is what the new Freehub looks like. This is a nylon bushing. What happens is this nylon bushing wears in this section right here, and the play gets to be too much, and then it just has too much lateral movement like that. So with your rebuild kit, you're going to get a spacer like this. You have to make sure that you put this spacer on top of the bearing right there. That just rides on there. And then what you're going to do is make sure that this is properly lubricated. You put your Freehub oil in there. Let me show you what the Freehub oil looks like. I bought this at the bike shop. You can use a thin mineral oil. This is called a Dumont Freehub oil. The key is to get a thin oil that are going to allow the pawls to engage. So I have my new spacer on. I've got my new hub, which is lubricated, and you don't need a lot in there. You need maybe 4 or 5 drops and lubricate all of the nylon bushing surface. So what I'm going to do is start to set this hub down on, okay, and then I'm going to push in the pawls while I'm rotating the hub, and then it drops right on. And that's the way your hub is supposed to sound when it has the proper weight oil in it. Hear that? Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is make sure all of this stuff is clean. I've already cleaned it. The brake clean does a good job. Put that in there and start to screw that down. Okay, now what I'll do is use my 10 millimeter and my 5 millimeter. Is that it? That's a 6. Okay, cut it, buddy. And I'll use my 5 millimeter on this side to get that spun in. They don't give you a torque value for this. It should be snug so that it doesn't come apart. But basically what you want to do is just snug it down. I wouldn't even guess, but you can kind of feel when it starts getting tight. You don't have to crank down on that. That's not going to go anywhere. And then you want to check the motion again, right here, like that. Hear that? It's loud, but that's the way it's supposed to sound. Then on this side, we want to screw in the bearing retainer on the other side. This one will affect how your wheel spins. It's kind of like a like the old cone wrenches, where you have to be very careful how much pressure you put on the bearing itself. So I'm going to screw that down on, and you can adjust that when it gets into the bike. You'll know you want it as tight as you can without impeding like the bearings. So you want it to spin freely but be as snug as it can get. That doesn't have to be torqued down. So I'm using the Allen wrench and the little spinner to hold, the spanner wrench to hold on the other side. And then you can kind of feel whether it's, okay, that's a little bit too tight. I'm feeling a little bit of notchiness in the bearing. So I'm going to loosen up a little bit. Let me see here, loosen up just a little bit, and now I'm going to feel, and no notchiness at all. So the next thing you do is put everything back together. Everything here is indexed, so I'm going to pick up my my cassette and slide that on. And there's one on the cassette that's larger than every other one, these little teeth in here to align it. So align that large one up with the large one on the cassette body. You put this on and spin it down. And in this case, you don't even need the chain whip because it works with the ratcheting mechanism. You're not working against it at this point. So I'm going to use my Park Tool Shimano, and then this one, it does give you a torque spec. It's right on the cassette itself. It's 40 Newton meters. I don't have a torque wrench to do that, so I just kind of snug this down by hand. Better to be too loose than to over tighten it. You can always retighten it, but if you make it too tight, you're liable to mess something up in there. And now we have a rebuilt hub that sounds like the day it was put on the bike. So there we are. Last thing to do is to pop this side in, lubricate, clean that, and that just pops in by hand. You're going to want to clean your brake disc up with brake cleaner because your oily hands have touched it at this point, and that's ready to be installed back on the bike like brand new. Been riding this one for 7 years. I'm good for another 7 years. Hope this was helpful to somebody. Go ahead, hit it, buddy.